Hey, this is Ian Faison from Vetrepreneur Network. Today I'm here with Nick Black, the co-founder of InKind. Nick, how's it going?
Ian, doing great, my friend. How are you?
I am doing well. So today we're going to talk about your company InKind, how it started, your journey from the military into being an entrepreneur. And first off, I want to hear, what's your background? What did you do in the military? And how did you get started?
Sure. I am from Great Falls, Virginia. I had the opportunity, both my parents were in the government and lived overseas. So I grew up in Africa for 9 years, 4 years in Europe. Went to Johns Hopkins University where I did Army ROTC, which is how I got commissioned into the Army. I had the privilege of serving in the 173rd Airborne and 1st of 503rd Infantry. We did 2 deployments to Afghanistan, one to Paktika province, and then another to Wardak. So we did about 27 months, and I got out of the military in 2011, I think January, and then went to business school that summer. So that's the background of how I've ended up where I am.
So after business school, what was your first job, like your first civilian job, or did you go right into entrepreneurship?
I went right into entrepreneurship. So right before business school, I was fortunate enough to do a private equity internship with a group in Dallas, Texas. And then I also started a nonprofit. So that was my first foray into philanthropy, which is where the idea for InKind came from. But I've never had a real job. I've been just kind of making it up as I go along, which is great. But it's been an incredible learning experience, this entrepreneurship game.
Yeah, so you get out of business school, you launch your nonprofit. Is that kind of how you started to kind of plant the seeds for, what was needed for InKind? Tell us a little bit about what InKind, what you guys do, and the founding team.
Yeah, sure. So Stop Soldier Suicide was founded when myself and 2 other guys that went to Hopkins, both Army officers, got out in 2011. I think the 501c3 was approved in 2010. But the so what there is that all of us, were in combat, and it was startling that we've lost more men and women to their own hand, to the enemy. So long story short is that starting a nonprofit is absolute hell. It's torture. It's a lot harder than I ever thought it would be. But we grew the organization to a point where we hired our first employee, a Marine NCO, who came in 2013. And the story of InKind is that we actually moved into office space. I opened the door of the office and there was nothing in it. Well, we've had people say that they'd love to support us, they'd love to give, and a lot of times they don't. But with this empty office, I first went online and asked our social media community of about 250,000 people if people could donate items. Lo and behold, somebody donated a floppy disk. Only people in the nonprofit world can get that, but someone sent me a floppy disk. Then I went down to the local office store, and some 19-year-old kid laughed at me when there was a nonprofit discount. So pissed off and motivated, I called my business school buddy, Jeremy Berman, who's a big technology guru, and asked him if there's a platform that would allow us to connect with more people to give exactly what we needed. We couldn't find one, so we built InKind. And the catalyst for InKind was that in 4 days, we had about $5,000 worth of office products donated. One of the faults was we did have a limitation. So for example, we asked for 6 staplers and we got 13 because people kept on giving. From that point, we realized that there was a massive hole in philanthropy. And ever since, we've been on a quest to build a free storytelling platform for nonprofits to answer the 2 questions all donors ask for them. What do you do? And where's my money go?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And you and I have talked about how much there is a need for this in the nonprofit community. So tell me, how did you meet Jeremy, and how did you know that he was the right person to be a business partner?
Sure. So I got to business school. I had to do 2 months of prep math courses because I barely had. But Jeremy showed up right when school started. And it was really hard for me to acclimate back to civilian life, nevertheless, the graduate school world. But I met Jeremy because our wives became really good friends. And Jeremy was a president of the Entrepreneurship and Private Equity Club. So both of us kind of traveled in parallel lines. And the more and more we hung out, the more we realized that we had things in common. And the biggest piece we had in common was this idea of social entrepreneurship. And maybe not what a lot of people think of social entrepreneurship, but the concept that as we look at industries today, these large established behemoth industries, how are you going to create a company to produce value and to differentiate yourself? And I believe, and I think he does as well, is that the next great companies in the market are going to be because they use social impact is differentiator. They're going to make more money, not because of, not because they're taking away from social issues, but because they've aligned societal impact with their product or service in an interesting way. So we kind of hit off on that. And he was the first person I thought of when we started talking about this massive need that Stop Solar Suicide had. And he's a good dude. So he paper glued this website together for us. And then lo and behold, more nonprofits want to use it.
Yeah. And, I think it's so funny how a ton of veterans that are out there that go to either business school or get out of the military and are working in corporate America find, a few like-minded folks, whether it's veterans or civilians, and kind of start talking about starting businesses. And as we all know that, over 40% of people coming out of World War II were looking to start businesses, and our generation is much the same way. Whereas we see a problem and we want it to be solved. Mm-hmm. How much kind of traction have you seen with the nonprofit community and reaching out to organizations and saying, we can help you, raise, I'll help you tell your story and kind of, raise efforts and awareness around that?
Yeah, we're seeing good traction, but the biggest problem is our platform's free. And it's also fighting inertia. So nonprofits are already doing incredible work. They're a massive part of our economy. I believe it's about 6% of our US GDP, and they're spending a ton of money. When we're coming to marketplace as a startup, it's really trying to get over that initial hump of doing something new. I think that's the big kind of barrier that a lot of startups face. So right now, InKind, if you take a look at it, it's a little bit of a wish list within a Kickstarter page. But where we're migrating to is really be able to tell and automate the story of what's happening on the ground. And we're doing this for two reasons. One is democratize giving, so anyone, group or business can give at a comfortable price point and see their gift move the needle. And the other piece is automate stewardship. We're going to create stories around the lowest common denominator of philanthropy, which is the actual work that's being on the ground. With that, it's been tough, but we're looking for nonprofits to help, and the only thing we ask is to help us help them. Give us feedback, give us guidance, and we'll make it happen.
So as you're working through this process, and you're working with Jeremy, you have your co-founder, where did you feel naive in the process? Where did you feel like, hey, I don't really know what the next step is. I don't know the next level of knowledge as an entrepreneur, or what are the gaps in my knowledge?
Everywhere. So I think that's the first step if you want to be successful, is to understand what you don't know. I thought business school did a great job of teaching you about an inch deep in 1,000 different puddles, but I never thought that I knew everything that was going on. I think to answer your question, which was really surprising to me coming out of business school, is I thought I had a decent grasp on the concepts and intent of different, marketing and sales and pricing and all that. But I had no idea of the implications of the legal side of the house. I found myself the first 4 months, I was doing more legal work than business work. I was trying to figure out what all these fancy words meant. And then when you start stringing these words together, what that concept meant. So that was a very, that was a hell of an awakening. Really, and then, as an entrepreneur, you don't want to spend money. So you find yourself sitting at the table and you're always outgunned. So you'll be talking with someone, they'll have, like 4 general counsels, and I'm sitting there and barely know how to, what indemnification means, and trying to negotiate something. So it's been interesting. Again, I get thrown into the fire, but if anything, the military prepares you for that, to be confident and align people behind a common vision, and then trying to figure out a way to get there without getting caught in the weeds.
Yes. So with kind of regards to the legal stuff, I mean, how did you go from that into, looking for funding, seeking, a seed round of funding and all of that?
We spent a long time proving out the model. So we went through all traditional steps. We had 2 kind of revamps of the platform, and really trying to prove to ourselves, most importantly, that this is a viable business model. And once we proved it to ourselves and we went out and started raising capital, that was absolutely brutal. I think we're going to be going out to the market again this winter, and it's already getting the shakes from that one. But we're lucky enough to find this group called Task Force X, which is led, the managing director is Brandon Shelton. But Brandon was actually in 173rd in 2001. And we connected just on a random, nothing to do with business. But Brandon has his belief, and his investment thesis is the investment in veterans that have proven leadership and proven experience in the technology space. So with Brandon and his fund on board, it really allowed us to help us and gave us leverage with talking to other investors. But we've got an extraordinary group of people that believe in what we're doing, that get the vision, and it's been really humbling, to see people buy in to that and then write a check, which is amazing because there's a lot more money than I have. So it's really neat to see.
Yeah. Do you think, the kind of separation between you having a great idea and starting to execute that idea? I mean, do you get lost in the weeds of legal and funding and all of that, or do you kind of embrace it as a separate challenge of this kind of, your Vetrepreneur journey?
Yeah, so I don't even care about the idea or the funding. I really care about the pain because it really sucks to be a nonprofit. And I'm a pretty fiery person. So whenever I need motivation to keep my head in the right place, I just send a couple of emails out of Stop Soldier Suicide, which I'm on. We hired a new executive director and we've got an incredible team in there. But it's really, really hard being a nonprofit. And I try to keep that focus and to keep our mission in front of me. So I have that bearing to just keep going along, because otherwise I think I just get drowned in the tiny little complexity that can just suck you into a world that you never thought you'd be into. But you'll find yourself in the middle of the night waking up, staring at legal documents and wondering how you got there.
Yeah. So were you running both at the same time, or how did you kind of make the transition between the two?
Yeah. So I was doing SSS. I was doing 3 consulting jobs to pay the bills while fundraising for InKind. So it was a tough year, but it really taught me. You go through hard times, you appreciate the good ones as well. But at SSS, Stop Soldier Suicide in particular, we've hired some incredible people, social workers, veterans. Actually, just hired an Army Lieutenant Colonel who just retired, and he's taken the organization to another level. So my goal was to set him up for success, and I think that we've done that. But he is doing extraordinary things. So now I get to be a real board member, which is fun, and just kind of a different level of leadership and trying to be helpful.
Yeah, awesome. What's next for InKind?
Oh, man. So we're working with, we'd love to get more nonprofits on the platform to test it out. The big milestone for us is that we're relaunching the platform in about 60 days. So I believe today is May 2nd. So let's say July 4th. And that's really the storytelling piece. And that's how we think we're differentiated in the market. If you take a look at philanthropy today, there's a huge battle going on in Silicon Valley. There's a battle everywhere about that donate button. The donate button where you give $10 and someone's taking 8 to 10%. We don't care about that. We're complementary to cash fundraising. What we're focused on is the what do you do button. So when you click on a what to do button, it's whatever that nonprofit does and executes their mission. We're trying to automate that story to allow individuals, groups, and businesses to engage and give to reduce those project costs. So I really think that as we relaunch this platform, we're going to have something that's never been done. And for me, it's worth doing.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out. If anybody has any questions about InKind or SSA, where can they find you?
So InKind, my email is nick@inkind.us. I'm on Twitter, so I think I have like 60 people following, but it's Nick Kofor Black. And for Stop Soldier Suicide, go to the website, stopsoldiersuicide.org, especially this community with veterans. Get involved.
And InKind.us to find out more information there. Hey, thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate it, and we'll be checking in with you soon. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate the opportunity.